Hello and welcome to the 1/106 of a second photography podcast. This podcast is called Olympus for stills and Panasonic for video. Now you might remember some time ago I did a podcast about my feelings on the Micro Four Thirds system. I've had 4 Micro Four Thirds cameras. First one I had was the Olympus pen, the original pen. I bought it really cheap for sort of 20 quid and I thought I can't go wrong with this, and I really liked it, and I started to get a few lenses for it and I started to get some vintage lenses on it and I really liked it. Simple camera, simple, didn't matter too much if it got damaged, so I took it everywhere with me. Very robust camera, happy with it, shot raw, no problems. I then upgraded to Panasonic camera, and I think it was maybe the G3 or maybe the G4. I thought that was okay. I mainly got it for video, but the problem was it didn't shoot multiple of 30 frames per second. So it didn't shoot in 30 frames per second and it didn't shoot in 60. It did 25 and I think 50. While that was quite good at the time, that wasn't really suitable for me because I was mixing it with footage from other cameras. I was mixing it with footage from my iPhone, and my iPhone was always going to be at 30 frames per second. So I didn't keep that camera very long. I returned it to the shop I bought it from. Then I bought the Olympus OMD EM10, and that was a brilliant camera. Really pleased with that camera. Very good for stills. It had in-body stabilization. It had lots and lots of features. It was packed with features. The menus took forever to go through because there were so many features, and it was a good camera, and it was small and it was robust, and it actually got damaged and it got fixed again free of charge on the warranty. I was happy with it, but I got to this stage where I thought I'm not using it. I'm just not using Micro Four Thirds. So I did a podcast about that. To me, a Micro Four Thirds camera, stills wise, is really for landscape, maybe street photography. Reason being is you don't get a shallow depth of field like you do on other camera systems, and I do a lot of portrait work. So I was starting to think this isn't for me, but I'd invested quite heavily in the lenses. I had some really good lenses, and while I could bear to get rid of my OMD EM10, and I did, I sold it, I couldn't really bear to get rid of my lenses. They were some fantastic lenses. So I kept them, and I was in a bit of a no man's land. And then I needed to do a bit more video work. So I bought a cheap Panasonic Micro Four Thirds camera for doing video work, and it's been really good. I don't use it exclusively. I use it for certain things, and I still use my Canon camera for other things. It just depends on the scenario, but it's really good because now I can start to use my macro lens, which I had for Micro Four Thirds, in my video work. Canon do things very well, and Micro Four Thirds cameras do things well for video. But going back to the Olympus EM10, the video wasn't that good. It was a very low bit rate, just wasn't very good. It was 30 frames per second, unlike the previous camera I had. You could use it for family videos, but you couldn't use it for putting things out there like I do on my YouTube channel. So I never used it for video. I used it for one video, and I really wasn't very happy with the output. So then after that, I never used it for video again. And it got me thinking when I changed, and I got rid of the Olympus and I got the Panasonic. I have another Olympus camera, which is the TG5 Tough, and again I'm very pleased with that. Interestingly, the video aspect in that is quite good. It shoots 4K and it does very good slow motion. Olympus have upped their video output recently, and particularly the newest camera they've got, I think I don't know the exact name, the EX10 maybe, that's got very good video from the reviews I've seen of it. Olympus have been one of those companies like Pentax who pack a lot of features in. You get tremendous value with an Olympus camera. You get so many features and you don't pay extortionate prices for them. They invented the Micro Four Thirds system along with Panasonic, but the video has always let them down. So they're a very good stills camera, and really they have class-leading image stabilization. On the EM10, I had 3-axis image stabilization in the camera, in the sensor, so I didn't have to have it in the lenses. So with Canon system, I've had to have it in the lenses. That's not been a problem. I've been happy to do that. But it meant I could, even in video, I could walk around and it was a very smooth shot. Not that I used it for video. I could do an awful lot of handheld photography at slow shutter speeds. I could go down to a 25th of a second. If I was really needing to, I could go down to maybe 1/5 of a second and not get any image blur. Of course, the problem with that is while you holding the camera might not blur the image, you can't capture movement at a 1/5 of a second because it will be blurred unless you intentionally wanted to do that, like have a car drive past or capture a waterfall. So I was very pleased with that. You got time-lapse features in it, really good. You got, because it was mirrorless camera, if you're doing a long exposure, the picture built up on the screen as you went, and you can make a decision about, yep, I've got what I want, or yep, the exposure's done now, so I'm going to finish there. So if you're using bulb mode, for example, you didn't have to guess. You could actually think, right, I'm happy with that exposure now. Olympus made very good cameras for stills. Panasonic should essentially be the same, but I've always found they're not quite as good. They don't have quite as many features in. So if you're going to use your camera, your Micro Four Thirds camera, just for stills, I'd get an Olympus. But their video for Panasonic is much better. So the GH3, GH4 and GH5 have all been really big video-centric mirrorless cameras. And professionals use those all the time and still to this day use them. So the video is very good at Panasonic cameras. It's almost like it's Panasonic's specialty. Now Olympus are starting to catch up. How much you can customize and the pro features you get with the GH5 mean that Panasonic are the real leaders there. You can get a lot of adapters like Metabones, and they're really designed for Panasonic cameras. And they're speed boosters, so they allow you to fit other glass from other systems onto your Micro Four Thirds body, and they alleviate the depth of field problem. I don't really know the physics of it, but it reduces the crop of the focal length, and I think it effectively gives you a bigger aperture somehow. It gathers more light, gives you a bigger aperture. With Micro Four Thirds, I've always said how the crop and the change in depth of field I feel is a limiting factor for me. However, you can overcome that, but it's expensive. I've already got the Canon glass, so I'd be okay with that. I could put my Canon lenses on, but shelling out £400 to £500 for a speed booster seems a lot. So Panasonic do very good video. Sometimes they're not as good as Canon. They don't have the great autofocus that Canon has. And I know Sony now has very good autofocus. Canon really, for me, are the market leader in autofocus for video. Their dual pixel AF. It's very good. The Panasonic seems to work by contrast detection, maybe a bit of phase detection in the upper models, but it's just not as good. With the sort of thing I do, I can cope with manual focus, or I can cope with focusing once and not needing continuous focus. So I've been very pleased with the Panasonic. In the Panasonic camera I've got, you can also save as MP4 with a high bitrate, or you can save as AVC HD, which I don't really like. The compatibility of it is not as good as MP4, and I'm quite happy with MP4. So I've always felt that despite the two companies, Olympus and Panasonic, having very similar starting points, sharing the same system, I've always felt that really Olympus are better at photography and Panasonic are better at videography. But what do you think? Do you agree with me? Does it even matter in today's world where we have very good smartphones? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget you can support the podcast on Patreon. You can follow the conversation on Twitter. And I've also launched a new website where I'm putting all my episodes and hoping to put some extras on. And that's 160spp.com. Thanks for listening.